Today's guest is one of my probably closest and longest friends here in Cleveland, David Gilbert. David, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brian. But two things I always say about Brian. One, best partner we have, because it's about your way of doing things is say yes first unless there's a reason we can't, and not say no unless there's a reason we have to. And it's a huge difference. And the other, I always tell you, I hope I can say it on the podcast, it's about just getting shit done. I am, to me, that's how I am in life. Just you get shit done. That's how you prove your worth. That's how you could have all the strategies you want, and strategies are important. But if you don't know how to execute, and for anytime there's some article about something that Metroparks does, I send Brian a text. And I just say GSD.
GSD, which is just a phenomenal, and that's a credit to the entire team. When you look at the 25,000 acres, again, this is the Tales and Trails podcast sponsored by KeyBank. So we're talking about kind of things that go on, the nuances. We talked about trails kind of early on, but let's talk about a couple of the things from a promotional standpoint. Let's talk about the background behind the Cleveland script signs, one of my favorite all-time locations. And it's interesting in leadership, not always do you get your way, but it was one of those things. Hannah and I and the team were up there. I'm like, no, I think we need to move it. It needs to go back. And when you look at where we position that one sign in particular, it may be the most photographed site in all of Cleveland. I don't know if there's another one, unless you can think of it.
No, not at all. And so we came back and said, let's do a handful of script Cleveland signs that are in the most iconic locations we can think of in Cleveland. We're only going to do a limited number. And Brian was the first to say, hey, let's do one at Edgewater. You put it where it is. And what's crazy is it is winter, summer, it doesn't matter. People are, especially you go on weekends, there are lines of people waiting to take pictures. There are wedding photos. It's crazy. Every time we have family and we love going down to Edgewater, always go there because our family wants to go. It's not me saying, let's go take a picture on the script Cleveland sign. I've done that enough. But out of town families say, that's there. I want to take a picture and send it out to everybody. It's amazing.
Carter's prom picture is there with all of his buddies. It was just,
I love it.
It was one of those things where I think it was just like, there couldn't be a better location. I think Metroparks has at least 3 of them. We've got one at Abbey Road, looking into downtown. We've got the one on the far east side at Villangela Euclid Park. We've got the one at Edgewater. There's 2 more, one at Voinovich, and then the one at the Foundry.
Correct.
So that's the 5.
That's
now,
it.
Tell me, there is an extra one, correct, to move in and out if one gets...
There is. So we have an extra one, and we pay every year to keep them painted and updated, but they are so iconic. It's amazing. You get every national event, every time Cleveland is featured on national TV, there's always some shot, depending on where they are, of the script Cleveland sign. And it's great. It's become iconic. People wear that script Cleveland on their chests. And we really don't plan. There's one more, I won't say where, we have promised to do if a project happens. We don't plan on doing a lot more. You want to keep scarcity. We look to manifest that brand in other ways. Maybe it'll be through lighting or we have it in lots of other ways, counting on the Metroparks to, continue to be creative in how we do it. But it's great how locals have pride in that.
Oh, it's such a wonderful thing. I mean, when you think of, the amount of memories, we talk about memories in the park. We talk about, the 21, 22, 25 million visitors that come through the parks annually, the 25,000 acres, world-class zoo. It is about memories. But let's talk about you personally. You use the trails. You're a trail advocate. You cycle how many miles a year? How many states? Like, talk to me a little bit about your own usage, your own personal use.
Yeah, I've always been a big outdoors person. We live 1 mile from South Chagrin Reservation. In fact, the reason we moved where we were, we wanted to be within walking distance of the park. In fact, we just had 14 people staying at our house for Thanksgiving. And every year we host, our Friday morning tradition is we all go for a hike in the Metroparks. And our family from all over the country loves it. I'm probably on the trails in South Chagrin, walking the dog, trail running, certainly when the weather's nice, at least 5 days a week, my wife and I, even in the winter, multiple days a week. And I do a lot of cycling, and I'm just in and around the parks, I do the Emerald Necklace many times a year.
We cycle it together, the towpath.
Absolutely.
Which then was the genesis of the next topic of conversation.
Yes, I'm excited about that one. But I several times a summer, I'll ride my bike downtown. What's amazing is it's about 30 miles and all on trail. And about 25 of that, I'm off-road on Metroparks trails, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think, we take for granted some of the things. Paul Dolan, the president of the Guardians, he and I have cycled in. He bikes to work, an often advocate. He's very excited about the East Side trails, the Slavic Village downtown trail connector. And do you remember the time in the Jeep, me and Hannah zipping around Cleveland and showing things? But
all right, so here's a story about Brian. So I probably only known you maybe a year. We're in your white Jeep. I said, show me all the stuff Metroparks are doing. And you took me this little area down by at the kind of at the Metroparks around the steel mill and
Harvard Jennings area.
Yes, yep. Mm-hmm. And you're like, here we did this curb cut here. I was like, the city gave you permission to do that? And you looked at me and said, permission? And I was like, I like this guy. That's all I need to know.
We used the right of way to our advantage, and we increased public access to an area that had not had it before.
Yes, and it's amazing how it's probably added to the quality of life for so many people. And sometimes it's just simple things like that make this city more desirable to live.
What's really interesting about that is there was so much debate back in the day, which really stalled the progress of the towpath north of Harvard. We've talked about the community knows that the atomic bomb, Harshaw Chemical, and there was always this thought process that we were going to cross the Cuyahoga River by now Cleveland Cliffs, and it was just one of those things where it was just so cost prohibitive. Our team actually developed a shortcut to begin with, coming down Harvard and then coming up Jennings, mm-hmm. and it turned out to be very fateful that was end up being the preferred route. So the work that we had done 2 years prior by doing that curb cut and the sidewalk literally was the precursor to the way the towpath is currently built today. Yes. It's got its own bridge, it's got its own thing, but we literally put a temporary connection in, which then tied to Steal Your Comments, Mitchell Snyder's group. He believed in the towpath before people even in Cleveland adopted it. And so I give First Interstate and their team a huge amount of credit.
Yes.
But we did a lot of, I would say, unique work to provide safety and access to our folks. But then we really, friendship and professional contact all the way through, we got to this point of the signage. So let's talk about, this new project that we're all kind of working on together.
Well, one of the things at Destination Cleveland, we're not there to build infrastructure. We don't have a budget for it. We are, the best way to think of our organization is the consumer marketing organization for this community outside of Cleveland. And our job is to attract people. But also we have a whole experience arm, and how do we increase the usage of great things that are here? So with the work the Metroparks has done over the last couple of years, you now have completed or almost there, the towpath over 100 miles that terminates, you could look starting or ending at Edgewater. So just sort of being a cyclist, I know how many people, it's niche, but it is hundreds of thousands of people that travel every year to do multi-day rides.
Yes.
So, okay, you've got this amazing asset in the towpath that now, if people do that 101-mile route, and actually it connects to a much larger, longer route all the way down to Cincinnati. But whether you talk 101 miles or further, you're going to start or end in Cleveland. And so we pulled together the Metroparks. There is two different towpath groups, kind of a nonprofit for the northern and southern end of the towpath. We brought together the Convention Visitors Bureau from Akron, Canton, all in a room, and said, we'll pay for most of it. Let's do some research and talk about what these through riders do and need on a path like that to better plan their trip and make their trip easier. It's not about building new stuff. It's all there, but how do you make sure the planning tools are there? How do you make sure the right signage is there? How do you make sure that they know where to go, what to do, how to make it easy to do? And that part's the cheap part. The expensive part is to build the stuff that you build. one of the things that holds our community back sometimes is you have all these different groups who sort of claim ownership of little pieces, don't necessarily like to work together. Ours is thinking of, we want to put the frosting on the cake. A lot of people have the cake. We're not as interested, not that's not a good thing, but our role is not about the local people who use the path. Those groups, that's really what they do. We want to make sure that once we have a great package all together, we're going to promote it all over the country. And how do you get tens and tens of thousands of people every year to come to Northeast Ohio, use the towpath for a multi-day ride? And when they do that, they're going to start or end in Cleveland, and they're going to do a lot more than just be on their bike. They're going to go to the Rock Hall. They're going to, and all these things we do is not just about the visitor dollar and supporting lots of jobs. It's to change the perception of Cleveland. So now more people want to live here, invest here, work here, all those things. And we're really excited because we've got this asset most communities would die to have, but we haven't done a great job, and it wasn't the time. Now's the time to promote it as a visitor destination.
We here in Cleveland have challenged ourselves through the Destination Cleveland, the brand identity of how do we continue to grow, in a more global way instead of looking at, hey, we want to beat Indianapolis and we want to beat Pittsburgh. It's like, no, we want to be the best in class. And, kudos to you and the entire team. I mean, we could talk about the solar eclipse that the Metroparks was responsible for the weather. And we think we did a really good job, but you were responsible for the Final Four. And I think there was a there was a opening day of baseball. So let's talk about that weekend here in Cleveland.
It was remarkable. Women's Final Four, we had been awarded 6 years before in a big competition amongst other cities. A lot of fundraising planning, everything to elevate it above what it had been in other cities. And of course, we got so fortunate to have Caitlin Clark, and really, I'd say that the big peak, and now it's continuing to go in women's basketball. The eclipse, about 4 or 5 years out, we had realized that Cleveland was going to be in the path of totality, and we made up our minds that we were going to make sure that Cleveland was the media epicenter of the United States, even though that path of totality went through many other big markets. We started early getting NASA involved and kind of had a big table of people.
Great Lakes Science Center, Metroparks. I mean, so many people poured on. Yeah.
And our job wasn't to plan stuff. It was just, hey, what's everybody planning? What's cool stuff? Let's get together and let's promote it as this is the place. It just so happened it was the day after the women's Final Four ended, and it was, and then of course you had opening day of the Guardians the same day as the eclipse, which was great because they moved the game back a few hours and opened up the stadium for people to watch the eclipse, open up the ballpark. It was as magical a weekend in my lifetime in Cleveland.
We actually got to spend the eclipse together on the shores of Lake Erie, one of our favorite places, right in the Edgewater Park neighborhood. And when you think of, I was it wasn't a skeptic, but I'm just like, you kind of close your eyes and you kind of, okay. It may have been one of the coolest things I think I've ever seen. And the fact that the lake that day was active before, and then as the eclipse happened, the lake laid down, very calm and quiet, and then the sun came, and it was like something totally out of our control that we got to be part of on a national level. I mean, Robin Roberts stayed in town. We give Greg Harris a tremendous amount of credit for opening up the Rock Hall. They've got capacity, and it was one of those things where the weather was just almost perfect for this community. And, we talk about being this weather community, but I firmly believe that, we're best in this 4-season type of mentality. And certainly we're feeling a little bit of it now here.
Yeah. And look, people complain about the weather here. The whole northern half of the U.S. has lousy weather. People talk about Seattle, what an amazing place. And it is 4 months of the year. And I have a lot of family and close friends out there, and they'll tell you the weather stinks here 8 months a year. You deal with it. And I think we're good at dealing with it.
Correct.
We embrace it, and that's what counts.
Well, with us today is David Gilbert, President and CEO of Destination Cleveland, our marketing arm, and the Sports Commission.
Our team desperately wants Cleveland to succeed and wants to play their role in making sure Cleveland does succeed. And they take it personally. And it's not just, 9 o'clock, I better start selling today, and 5 o'clock. It's all
on all the time.
100%. And what's great is, like you mentioned our board. I think our board we go out of our way to pick people that are passionate about this city, that are doers, that are big thinkers. And it's not just it's not just, oh, someone is the CEO of XYZ company or organization, therefore we ought to have them. It's really about the person. And we're very careful because I feel like our board is the same way. We're spending about $5 million on Public Square. We're putting in about $3.5 million. Cities we're 6 in total in the whole project. Cities putting in, county $1 million. We've raised about $500,000 privately. And we have put up about 60 different lights all over Public Square. Actually more if you include on multiple buildings, on poles. We hired a really cool firm that does theatrical lighting. Their analogy is they want to use Public Square as a stage. We put speakers in.
Which is awesome.
It's going to be very cool. And what's going to happen, we're going to kick it off in April. We created a first show, if you will. And starting from dark until about midnight, about 6 or 8 different buildings all around Public Square are going to be lit in all kinds of different colors. And we're not doing commercial logos, like gobos of shapes and different things. And then every hour, once an hour, there's going to be about an 8-minute show. And it's going to be really cool, different images and lighting and sound. The first one's going to tell us, it's going to all tell a story about Cleveland. We're going to probably change it up about twice a year, like create an entirely new script. And then we're also going to do some great things up Euclid Avenue from Public Square to Playhouse Square. That'll be stage 2. That'll come out probably about 6 months later. But it's going to do a couple things. We know it will bring people down who just want to see it. We also know it will highlight Cleveland's living room, if you will, and it'll create a much better aura of safety. The lights come down onto the ground, they go up, and it will put people there, and it will be one of the most unique city lighting projects in the United States. And that's what we wanted. What's big, what's different.
A few quick hits before we end here. Favorite city to visit and why?
Ooh. There's a few. I would say my 2 favorite places just to be: Telluride, Colorado, and Mill Valley, California, and I would say Mendocino. 3 where I just feel at home, love the outdoors, love the beauty, love that steps from wherever you are, there's a great place to hike and see some amazing things.
What event here that you've hosted has been the most memorable?
I still have to go back to the RNC. I have nothing to do with political. It was because the energy was off the charts. The eyes of this country and the world were on Cleveland, and we delivered. And then they got back on the train and went to Philadelphia for the DNC.
One event that you'd want to get that we haven't gotten yet?
We are bidding on it right now, the Special Olympics USA Games for 2030. It's only every 4 years. I believe it would be maybe outside of the RNC, the most overall community impactful event we can host. It's down to Cleveland and Nashville. We're right in the process now. We have a site visit in February. We'll find out in April, and it would be amazing.
Thank you, David. This again, this podcast is really about being informative, and I can't thank you for being an amazing friend, professional colleague. This is the Tales and Trails podcast, and our guest today was David Gilbert. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Brian.